So just to give an example of what that meant in a real project, this was pretty text heavy, so I wouldn't bother trying to read it, but I'll just um, talk through it. So we had a client which was a leading tobacco company, FMCG major, that sought to optimize its integrated facility management strategy across 26 manufacturing sites. So it was looking at like how could it already outsourced a lot of facility management, but what was its strategy? Should it have one supplier globally? Should it have multiple local suppliers? Should it have specialist suppliers globally in one element of facilities management? All these kind of things and models that different companies adopt. And it wanted to really speak to um, facilities management suppliers and facility and its peers who were using these services to understand how these trends were changing, what best practice looked like, etc. So it's a pretty typical subject for us. I think we did about 25 interviews across the different domains, spoke to all the biggest facility managers, most of the biggest FMCGs on what they were doing in this area. Um, but how did this change when we were using AI? So we would normally start a project with a period of orientation, so reading of journals, reports, blogs, everything that we could around the market. You know, we have subscriptions to a lot of generalist magazines, to things like Factiva, where we can pick up all the main business um, journals, etc. So we did that again, but this time we were dropping everything that we were finding into the ingest folder instead of just making a note of it within the sourcing folder. Um, it's also very useful for early questions within a project. So when I talked earlier about sort of niche and super niche topics, the truth is that we don't, our head of FMCG who was covering this didn't know everything about facilities management. So there were kind of some real kind of basic, in a sense, basic but kind of structural questions to really understand how this worked. AI is very good at answering those kind of questions. Um, Primary research, how did it help? As I said before, main aid was just with transcription and summation tools. I think we probably used the AI to help us draft the first version of the questionnaire, but I think it probably changed so much with to and fro with the client that was fairly marginal by the time we actually started the project. Um, uh, Participation in forums and events. So pulling all these presentations, transcripts, everything we can into this kind of central repository. All the secondary research that we would normally do goes into the ingest folder, case studies, benchmarking data, industry reports, etc. So, and then all the call summaries and transcriptions. So then we had this tool that we could um, query and utilize as we were starting to try and answer our key intelligence questions. And so we would um, utilize that AI tool to query it and get responses specific to pulling, looking that would utilize the data from within the folder first and then fall back on broader web search, um, validated to that data so we could find, where it was. And that allowed us to, it speeded up the process of pulling stuff together, whether it's as simple as, oh, I remember reading that somewhere, but I can't remember where it was. Simple query in across the ingestion folder finds it in seconds rather than spending minutes searching through. To ideas that it's pulling together across a company filing, some data, and some interview content. So it's a very powerful tool. I wouldn't say that I wouldn't pretend that we're at the end point of expertise in doing that, but it's something that we've started using in our projects, and we think it's got great uh, potential. So we delivered the final product, benchmarking, supplier analysis, cost benefit assessment, efficient strategies that we were suggesting. There was a lot of emphasis on recommendations, etc. in this project, as there generally is with these kind of projects. Um, and how did AI help us deliver it? So we utilized a lot of the information that we queried from the ingest folder. We actually got it to create draft reports and compared them. We didn't actually use one of those draft reports, but we pulled out content from it. Um, we went back to the ingest folder with the initial intelligence questions to get its more developed response. Um, and we queried the ingest where there were questions that we had outstanding. We queried the ingest to see whether it could answer them. There you have to be, I think this is an area where you have to be particularly careful with AI because it tends to try to answer things even when it doesn't know. So you have to be very alert to, and that's where you get a lot of the issues. I've forgotten the technical term for it, sort of data mirages. Um, uh, we so in the end, for most of those, we ended up going back to respondents to try and clarify them. But it's worth trying through these tools. And the output was very successful. You probably expect me to say that, but the client was very happy after we'd worked through it with them with some iterations, and then they subsequently actually recommended us to a number of other companies. Soumya, are there any chat questions that we should respond to, or does anyone have any questions?
Yeah, Oliver, we have two questions. One question is from Yogesh. So he asks, which AI tools have you tried to create and query on ingest folder?
So we've only used this notebook LLM so far, but there are others, and we will be trying them out. I mean, I can give you recommendations, but frankly, if you put into Copilot or whatever, ask for competitors to Notebook LLM, it will give you a series of good ones, or ones that seem to be relevant. And as we haven't tried them out yet, I couldn't really distinguish between them. But Notebook LLM is the one that we've used, and we found it good, but not perfect. So I think we will potentially be trying others. But it may also be that our utilization wasn't quite right. So we're not. So we're going to persist with Notebook LLM until we're confident that we've got our processes are optimized, and then we might look at other companies.
Okay, Oliver, there's one other question from Nisha. She asks, what AI tools would you recommend for both secondary and primary research?
So, um, sorry, I'm having a bad day with my memory. What's the main secondary research AI that we use is it's not ChatGPT, it's not Copilot, it's uh, I'll come back on that in a second. It's the other really big one, Perplexity. Yeah, it's Perplexity AI is the primary one that we use for secondary. We think in our experience, is the most up to date and best one for standard research queries. And then on primary, I think they're all good for things like transcription and summarisation. And then, as I said, for this kind of ingest process, we've tried Notebook LLM, but I couldn't necessarily confirm that that's the best one.